There is a constant conversation happening in your head, right? A narrator that relives the past, criticizes the present, rehearses the future, and seems to never, ever take a break. It is there when you wake up. It goes with you in the shower, comments on your work, and especially shows up with full force when you try to rest at night. It is a life companion you never chose, but that seems to own the space. And because it never stops, you believe that this voice is you. And so, your solution is always to try to fix what it says. Think in a more positive way. Worry less. Control anxiety. It is a fight that has no end. The big point here is that the deep and immediate change you are looking for should not be to control this voice, but to understand its true nature. Because the more you try to silence the mind, the more it screams, the more you live inside it. So, the first big step is to stop living in your head. There is a fundamental difference between being the thinker and being the one who notices the thought. And it is in this small distance that everything starts to change. The problem is that when you do not notice this difference, you start to think that the flow of thoughts, worries, analysis, and judgments are the essence of who you are. And because of this belief, your solution for the suffering it causes is always to try to fix what it says. This creates a battle fought inside your own being, a war of attrition, exhausting that does not seem to end. Because for every negative thought you try to suppress, three others seem to show up in its place. For every worry you try to rationalize, the mind finds a new angle for disaster. It is like trying to stop the ocean waves with your hands, a huge and basically useless effort that only leaves you more tired. Have you noticed that some people seem to move through life with a calm that looks almost unreachable? They face challenges like all of us, deal with uncertainty and disappointment, but even so, there seems to be a core of peace inside them that is not shaken. They are not smarter nor luckier. Their life is not magically free of problems. So what is the secret? When you meet someone like that, the voice in your head immediately starts to create theories. Oh, this person had an easier life. They just do not care that much. Or they were born with a different temperament. This voice assumes that the difference is in the outer circumstances or in some inborn quality that you do not have. You start to believe that to have that peace, you would need to have different thoughts, a more positive mind, or a life with fewer reasons to worry. But what if the difference between the person who lives in peace and the person who lives in a mental storm has nothing to do with the content of the thoughts? The deep and immediate change calm people find does not come from controlling the voice, but from understanding something about it that most people completely ignore. The key is not to win the battle against thoughts. The key is to realize that you were never in that battle to begin with. The key is to stop living inside your mind. Pause for a moment, just a moment. Listen to what is happening in your head right now. And just because I asked you this, the voice in your head is probably saying, "What does he mean by that?" Or, "This is just another self-help talk." But whatever it is, just watch it. Notice that there is a flow of thoughts passing through there. Can you really notice that? Can you hear this inner narration? Now comes the most important question. If you can hear or watch this voice in your head, who or what is it that is listening? If there is a thought and there is the consciousness that notices this thought, can you really be both at the same time? Can you be the thinker and at the same time the one who watches the thinker? This question is fundamental and very important. It is an invitation to look at your own experience in a radically new way. Think about it. You notice your feelings. You notice the sensations in your body. You notice the sounds around you. And you also notice your thoughts. They show up in your field of consciousness, just like a sound shows up in your field of hearing. They come and go. This points to something extraordinary. There is a fundamental difference between the voice that thinks and the consciousness that notices the thought. There is the mental noise, the non-stop flow of words and images, and there is the silent observer, the space of consciousness in which all this noise happens. We can say that the non-stop voice is like the clouds that pass in the sky, and the observer is the sky itself, always present, spacious, and untouched by the clouds, no matter how dark or stormy they are. The problem is that from the moment we are born, we are taught to believe that we are the clouds and not the sky. And as a result, our identity started to be built on top of this flow of thought. You start to fuse completely with the narration, telling yourself, I am this, I am that. There is no distance at all. And when the voice says, you are in danger, you do not recognize it as a thought. You feel the danger in your body as an absolute truth. This fusion, this complete and unconscious identification with the voice in the head is the real source of psychological suffering. It is not the thought about tomorrow's meeting that causes you anxiety. It is your total and unshakable belief that you are this thought. It is the absence of any space between the observer and what is observed. You are living inside a movie and forgot that you are sitting in the theater chair. You believe you are the character on the screen, suffering everything that he suffers. Most of us live our whole life in this fused state. We are dragged by every thought, every emotion, every impulse the mind produces, like a leaf in a whirlpool. We believe we need to fix the content of the mind to find peace, without realizing that peace is already here, in the silent space behind the mind, in the place from where you are watching all this. But why does this voice never stop? What is its function? And if it is not you, why is it so persistent, so loud, and above all, so convincing? It is not just random noise. There is a mechanism behind how it works, a reason why it behaves this way. And understanding this mechanism is crucial to stop being its prisoner. Your mind thinks it is protecting you. It believes, with the best of intentions, that its non-stop commentary is vital for your survival and well-being. Think of the thinking mind not as an enemy, but as an incredibly powerful survival tool that evolved over millions of years. Its original function was clear: to identify threats, solve problems, learn from past mistakes, and plan the future to guarantee your safety. It was this ability that allowed us to build shelter, find food, and avoid predators. It is basically a machine that analyzes and predicts. The problem is that this machine was never designed to be turned off. In the modern world, where threats are rarely a tiger hiding in the bushes, the mind applies the same operating system to situations that are not about life and death. An important meeting at work, a hard conversation you need to have, or even an unanswered email are treated by the mental mechanism with the same urgency and seriousness as a real physical threat. For your mind, stopping the analysis is dangerous. It works under the basic belief that if it stops worrying, something terrible will happen. If it stops replaying past mistakes, you will be doomed to repeat them. If it stops obsessively rehearsing the future, you will not be ready. And for it, silence means vulnerability. To do this protective job, the mind works almost only in a very specific domain: psychological time. It only has two destinations: the past and the future. Notice this in your own experience. The voice in your head is always doing one of two things. Either it is in the past, chewing on things, digging up old conversations, reliving moments, taking apart mistakes you made, and asking, what if I had done it differently? It looks for clues that can no longer change the outcome, all in the hope of learning the lesson so it never happens again. Or it jumps to the future. It plans, rehearses, worries, anticipates problems, and creates disaster scenarios. It builds mental to-do lists, simulates conversations that have not happened yet, and tries to control every variable of a tomorrow that does not exist yet. All of this because it believes that by pre-living all the worst-case scenarios, it can somehow protect you from them. The only place where this voice cannot live is in the now, the present moment, simply because the now does not need commentary. The now is simply what it is. When you are fully immersed in feeling the hot water on your body during a shower, or in tasting a meal, or in listening carefully to a song, the voice gets quiet. It has nothing to analyze or predict in the pure fact of experience itself. Peace is always in the present, and that is why the mind avoids it. And the central mechanism that keeps it so powerful is your attention. Every time you engage with a thought, you validate it and give it energy. It does not matter if you agree with it, argue with it, try to push it away, or analyze it. Any form of engagement is fuel. Arguing with an anxious thought is like trying to put out a fire by pouring gasoline on it. When the voice says, "You are not good enough," and you answer inside, "Yes, I am. I did this and that," you just entered a debate with an illusion. You gave it reality by treating it as a valid partner in conversation. You gave your precious attention, your life energy, to a shadow. That is what keeps it alive and loud. This is where the secret of those calm people I mentioned lives. They did not find a way to turn the voice off. The voice keeps talking. The difference is that they learn not to take it so seriously. They stopped giving it attention. They know that the voice is there, but they treat it for what it is: background noise, not the truth about who they are or about what is happening. They understood on a deep level that the mental narration is not a faithful reflection of reality. It is a flow of conditioned habits, old fears, and automatic interpretations. They stopped giving the voice the power to define their experience. They can hear a comment from this voice about the future, and instead of believing it, they simply notice that it is the mind broadcasting fear again. But the burning question is, how can something as abstract as a thought, a simple sentence, or mental image turn into such a real, physical emotion? The answer is in a mechanism that runs in us so automatically that we rarely notice it. Think of it as an emotional echo chamber. It all starts with a single thought, which is often just a neutral interpretation or a question. But because we are so fused with our mind, we do not see it as a thought. We see it as reality. And it is in this exact moment of belief that the dark magic happens. The thought stops being a passing cloud and becomes the trigger for a whole story. The mind is not just a thinking machine. It is, above all, a storytelling machine. It takes a loose piece of data, an ambiguous fact, and instantly weaves it into a full narrative with characters, motives, a past that led to this, and a catastrophic future that unfolds from there. And our body, which is brutally honest, cannot tell the difference between a real threat and a vivid, well-told story. When the mind tells a story of danger, the body responds with the chemistry of danger: adrenaline, cortisol, muscle tension. The cycle works like this. The thought creates a story, the story creates an emotion, and the emotion creates more thoughts, each one more urgent and painful. This emotional echo chamber is the structure of daily suffering. It is not traffic that stresses you. It is the story about being late, about what your boss will think, about how this shows your lack of organization. It is not your coworker's feedback that hurts you. It is the story your mind tells about how that proves you are not good enough. It is not someone else's silence that makes you feel lonely. It is the story of abandonment that your mind builds in that empty space. Watch carefully, and you will see that the voice in your head is never, ever in the present, because it cannot operate here. The present moment is direct. It is about senses. It is factual. Right now, you are watching this video. Right now, you feel the weight of your body on the chair. Right now, you notice the light in the room. The now does not need commentary, it simply is. There are no problems in the now. The mind avoids the present as if it were poison to it, because in the present, its stories lose their power. A story needs time to exist. It needs a once upon a time and a and then. The present moment has no plot. That is why sinking your feet into the sand, feeling the hot water from the shower, or enjoying a cup of coffee can be so deeply peaceful. In those moments, you leave the mind cinema and land in the reality of your body and your senses. The narration stops, and all that is left is the experience. Psychological suffering does not come from what happens in your life. It comes from the stories you tell yourself about what happens in your life. Pain is a fact. Suffering is a narrative. Losing a job is pain. But the story the mind tells is, I am a failure. No one will ever hire me again. I am ruined. That is suffering. Pain is inevitable and often short-lived. Suffering is the mental resistance to what is, fed by an endless stream of stories. The problem is that this makes you believe you are trapped because of your life circumstances. You believe that if only the outer situation changed, if people acted differently, if you had more money or more success, then you would finally find peace. And as a result, many people spend their whole life trying to rearrange the furniture outside their own cell, without ever realizing that it is not the walls that trap them. What traps them is the unshakable belief in the stories the mind tells about those walls. But the door of this prison was never locked. It was always open. You can walk out at any moment, because this prison is not real. It is an illusion kept alive by your own attention and belief in the voice in your head. Freedom is not something to be earned out there. It is the simple act of seeing the nature of your prison and taking a step out of it. This is your condition: suffering, anxiety, regret. All of that is the result of sitting inside the cell, listening closely to the mind's stories, believing it is the highest authority and that the bars cannot be crossed. You are not a prisoner of your circumstances, your emotions, and your thoughts. You only become a prisoner of your identification with them, simply because you believe that you are the story, and not the consciousness that observes it. And while this belief stays in place, no change in the outer scene will bring the lasting freedom you seek. You can change cells, you can paint it a nicer color, but you will still be a prisoner. True freedom comes from a completely different place. It comes from the direct realization that the story is not you. The thought is not the truth. The emotion is just an energy moving through you, fed by a story. When you see this clearly, the spell is broken, and the voice loses its authority. The bars show themselves as the illusion they always were, and you see that the peace you were searching for was not on the other side of the prison wall. It was always here, in the silent, aware space that you are before any story starts. And if you have already seen this, but still feel trapped, you may be asking yourself, how exactly do I step out of this prison? How, in the middle of the storm of an emotional story, can I find my way back to the reality of the present moment? There is a practical, simple, and immediate way to do this, a first step you can take right now. It is a practice we can call notice and name. It is not a technique to fight your mind, to beat it or silence it. Remember, any kind of fight is fuel. This is a technique of disengagement. It is the conscious act of taking your attention away from the mind screen where the drama is happening and bringing it back to where you are, to the reality of your body in the present moment. It is a three-step method to break the spell of identification at the exact moment it is happening. Imagine you just took part in an important meeting at work. Maybe you gave a presentation or shared your opinion about a project. The meeting ends, and as soon as you sit at your desk, the mental prison starts its rounds. The voice in your head explodes at full volume with a harsh critique of your performance. It says, "You should not have said that. It sounded stupid. Everyone noticed." Then it jumps to the future. Now they think you do not know what you are doing. You probably hurt your chances of being considered for that promotion. You ruined everything, again. Right away, your body reacts. You feel a heat rising in your face, a tightness in your chest, a feeling of shrinking. At this moment, you are inside the cell, and the story of failure is the only reality that exists. It is here, in this exact moment of suffering, that you can use the key. Instead of drowning in this current or trying desperately to swim against it, you're going to do something radically different. You are going to stop, just for 1 second. And here comes the first step: notice. Inside yourself, very gently and without judgment, you simply put a label on what your mind is doing. You say to yourself, I see. I notice that my mind is replaying the meeting and looking for mistakes. See the subtlety and the power in this. You didn't say, I am replaying the meeting. You said, I notice that my mind is replaying the meeting. With this small change in language, you just created a space. You stopped being the actor on the stage of the drama and became someone in the audience, watching the scene. You are not denying the thought, nor validating it. You are just recognizing it for what it is: a mental activity, an event in your consciousness, like a car passing by on the street. Just that. The second step is name, or more precisely, reaffirm. After noticing the mental activity, you consciously remember who you are in relation to it. You say inside, this voice is not me, I am the one who hears it. This is not a positive affirmation to make you feel better. It is a statement of truth about your basic identity. It is an active reminder of what we said before. You are the sky, not the storm cloud. Repeating this sentence inside, in the middle of a self-criticism crisis, is like turning on a light in a dark room. It breaks the hypnotic trance. You are consciously disidentifying from the content of the thought and realigning your identity with consciousness itself, the silent and always present observer. You are reminding yourself that even though the mind is producing a story of failure, the deepest part of you is perfectly intact, watching all this happen. Now that you notice the thought and remembered who you are, comes the third and most important step: anchor. The mind lives in the abstract time of stories. To leave the prison, you need to come back to the only place where stories do not survive, the physical reality of the present moment. And the doorway into the now is always your body. So you deliberately move your attention to physical sensations. Really feel your feet on the floor. Feel the pressure, the texture of your socks on your feet, the temperature. The mind cannot worry about the meeting and, at the same time, fully feel your feet on the floor. It can only do one thing at a time. Then, bring your attention to your hearing. Notice, without naming, 3 different sounds in the room: the hum of the computer, a distant voice in the hallway, the sound of your own breathing. Just listen, and finish with a single conscious breath. Feel the air entering, filling your lungs, and feel the air leaving. That is all. Notice, reaffirm, anchor. What happened during this practice? You did not fight. You did not try to convince yourself that the presentation was great. You did not try to force a positive thought. You simply took back your attention, which is the oxygen that keeps the fire of the story burning, and put it somewhere else. You put it in the sensory reality of the now. You left the mental prison and stepped on the solid ground of the present moment. It is crucial that you understand that the goal of this practice is not, and never will be, to stop your thoughts. If you try to use this technique with the intention of silencing the voice, you will only create more frustration and more inner conflict. The voice of self-criticism will probably still be there, muttering in the background. It will not magically vanish. But something changed. Your relationship with it changed. It stopped being the absolute truth that defines you and became background noise, like a badly tuned radio in the corner of the room. You do not need to smash the radio. You just need to stop putting your ear against it and believing every word it says. The choice is not between having negative or positive thoughts. The choice is between getting lost in the river of thoughts or resting on the bank of consciousness, watching the river flow by. So, where do you choose to put your attention? That is the only freedom that really matters. After this three-step practice, the emotional storm inside you starts to calm down, not because you convinced yourself that everything is fine, but because you stop feeding the story that said everything was wrong. The tightness in your chest loosens. The heat in your face fades. You see that the catastrophic story was just that, a story. Now, from this place of greater clarity and calm, you have a real choice. Before, your only option was to react, maybe send an anxious email apologizing, or chew on it for the rest of the day, letting your productivity and well-being be destroyed. Now, from the stillness of the observer, you can choose your next action consciously. Maybe the best action is simply to go back to your work. Maybe it is to get up and drink a glass of water. The point is to understand that you are no longer a slave to the chain reaction of your mind. You are in charge of your attention. This is the tool. This is the first step out of the cell, a step you can take many times a day whenever you notice you were taken over by a story. It is not magic. It is not an instant solution to all problems. It is a practice, a muscle, the muscle of consciousness. Every time you do this, every time you choose to notice instead of getting entangled, you weaken the habit of unconscious identification and strengthen your presence as the observer. You are literally rewiring the neural paths in your brain, training it not to fall so easily into the automatic pilot of suffering. This is the practical mechanism to claim your inner peace. This is the tool, the action you can take in the moment of crisis. The goal here is to start opening a new trail right next to the old one. At the beginning, the new trail will be narrow and you, out of habit, will find yourself walking on the old one many, many times. This is normal. It is expected. You will forget. There will be days, maybe weeks, when you will be completely swallowed by your mind's stories without even noticing. You will believe every worry, react to every judgment, and suffer with every narrative. And then, at some point, you will remember. And in that moment of remembering, there is no room for self-criticism. That is not a moment of failure. It is a golden chance to practice again. You will start to notice the mental noise earlier and earlier, not because you are becoming a master at controlling the mind, but because your home, your identity, is slowly moving. What I am describing here is not a journey to become a different, better, or more enlightened person. It is a journey back home. It is a process of taking off everything you are not, so you can finally rest in what you have always been. This is the journey of consciousness. It is a concrete path paved with moments of presence, of conscious choices about where to put your attention. There are no fantasy promises here. As I said, there will be moments of frustration. There will be resistance. But beneath all of that, there will be a growing recognition that you are not the drama. You are the space where the drama happens. And in that space, there is an unshakable freedom. Every time you gently choose to watch instead of believe, you weaken the spell and take back ownership of your own attention. So, I would like to invite you to try this. The next time the voice in your head tries to take you away, pause and just watch. Thank you for embarking on this journey with me. If this video resonated with you, I invite you to like and subscribe to our channel. Share this video with others so they can benefit from this message. And don't forget to leave a comment below sharing your thoughts, reflections, and experiences. Thanks again for watching and for joining me. Take care and see you soon.